Imagine the ROI of investing 8 weeks into your own personal and professional growth. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com. Enrollment is open for our fall program. This opportunity is for female leaders, executives, founders who are looking to 10x the way they think and execute. The program is equal parts education, collaboration, and accountability. It's all virtual, but it's live, interactive, real-time learning. And the curriculum includes everything from building your personal brand online to public speaking, podcasting, publishing, productizing your intellectual property, and even marketing partnerships. We also focus on wealth creation. My goal is to help you create a healthier relationship with both time and money. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com and you will find a video of Renegade grads who explain their experience, share what they've learned, and share their actual results. All of the information is on renegadeaccelerator.com. Here we go. Renegade Accelerator fall enrollment is open. We are in the early decision deadline period. So that means you can save money on tuition. We do have limited seats and there has been a wait list. So head to renegadeaccelerator.com and fill out the application if you're interested. And if you're not sure, just sign up for our emails. We will take you through a process that helps you determine whether or not the program is the right fit for you. The constant feedback I'm hearing from Renegade grads is that they join the program for the curriculum, for the education, for the mindset shift, for the tangible, tactical results. However, they don't realize what they're also getting is a lifelong community that is a mosaic of like-minded, like-hearted women who just continue to accelerate each other way beyond the program. And that is because when you graduate from the Renegade Accelerator, you're invited into the Renegade Collective. This is our alumni network, and we have ongoing programming. We have the ability to connect on a daily basis, network, help each other, and it's pure magic. So if this sounds interesting to you, head to renegadeaccelerator.com, and you can always reach out to me as well if you have questions. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. Head to renegadeaccelerator.com.
One of the most important things to me was, I look at my team as a collection of souls. These are people. They lose loved ones. They have, challenges at home. They have mental health issues. And all of that doesn't stop when they walk in the door to do their work. And so I also wanted to create an environment that they understood that I cared.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Just let go. One of my favorite humans is on the show today, Virginia Suliman. She is the Executive Vice President and CIO of Invitation Homes. She's also a recent Renegade Accelerator graduate. Prior to joining Invitation Homes, Virginia was Senior Vice President of Software Engineering at Hilton Worldwide, where she held a variety of escalating roles across digital and technology. Virginia was at Hilton Worldwide for 22 years. And at the end there, she oversaw 1,200 people. I got to know Virginia through a blind direct message well over a decade ago when I had my first company, and Hilton Worldwide became a client eventually. What I witnessed was that Virginia has this ability to bend corporate rules without breaking them. She has this talent of actually creating a subculture within culture sometimes, within her own division, her own group, and just figuring out ways that her team can show up as their full selves and express their creativity in different ways. You will love Virginia's Why Not Now idea, hopefully as much as I did. She initially had no intention of taking this new job as CIO, but she decided to go to the interview. And she shares the story about meeting the CEO and how a Pop-tart led her to saying, why not now? And now she has this new big role within a fast-growing company. In this wide-ranging conversation, Virginia and I talk about her personal experiences and how they've helped inform her leadership style. We talk about bending those corporate rules, and she gives very specific examples of this. She's brilliant, she's a pro at this, and there's so much to be learned. And Virginia also touches on her time within the Renegade Accelerator program and beyond. She shares what she's taken from the program and also how she invests in herself in general. I've learned and studied Virginia for years because I have so much respect for her style, her demeanor, and the results that she's able to generate in innovative ways. So without further ado, here is Virginia Suliman, otherwise known as V. Virginia, welcome to the Why Not Now show. This is such a treat. I'm so excited to have you join us. It's fun because, as we were just saying, when you know the person on the other side, it just makes the conversation that much more alive. So in the spirit of Why Not Now, let's hop in. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you asked yourself, why not now?
Absolutely. I want to start with something that really struck me. It struck me before because I've, been a fan before I got here and listened to a lot of the podcasts and listened to so many amazing people share their Why Not Now story. And one of the things as I was thinking about my moment, which I'll share in just a second, was how many Why Not Nows I had before this one that I said, it's not the right time. And that's, that really is, I think, an interesting point because that might feel like in that moment, you're not being brave or you're failing. But boy, I wouldn't have been right for the Why Not Now that I took if I wouldn't have said, you know what, I asked the question and it was a conscious choice. And I think that's really important. But I didn't say yes. I didn't make that leap at that time. And I had, a lot of those, I think, as I look back, that really prepared me. Staying where I stayed really prepared me for the Why Not Now that I have. And so I just wanted to share that because it was really weighing on me that it was such an important part of the Why Not Now journey. It's just being conscious of your choices and asking the question and being okay if the answer is it's not now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a why not now is answering, sometimes even stopping something or saying no, or it's not now. Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Yeah.
And your Renegade Accelerator, certainly a plug, of course, because I loved it and loved being a part of it. It reinforced some of that for me. So at some point in my life, I want to write a book, and I was sort of got caught up in the moment of it. And the program really helped me determine not now. You can do that, but there's a little bit more to be done before you're ready for that. And so, your program really helped me progress that thinking as well. But on to answer your question. So I'm going to paint a little bit of a story for, obviously, most of your listeners don't know me. And so the 22 years that I spent with Hilton Worldwide. And so I was there This was about late summer 2019. And I loved Hilton and still do love Hilton. Was happy, loved my team, would sacrifice and had sacrificed for my team, enjoyed the leadership, even when we disagreed, enjoyed the process. So just painting the picture that I wasn't in a place of corporate America where I felt stuck in a drain or, was itching to get out. I was content. I was happy. As often being content does. There's a little quiet wild horse there somewhere, sort of going. And I'd always been a rule bender, not a rule breaker within a corporate structure. And so there's always a moment to push. And I received a phone call from a really well-respected and someone that I had been able to build a relationship with that said, hey, I have a CIO opening through a company they were familiar with, not that they were a part of, that you might be interested in. It's a smaller company. It's, probably the right step. They need someone like you, meaning I'm a CIO, not a CTO. I'm not a former engineer. And so they needed someone that had a little bit more business type product background versus core engineering. And they introduced me. And that moment was sort of the baby, why not now? Like, why not? Like, what's the harm? I've been on many interviews before and actually highly recommend it to my team to build up, confidence and remind yourself how good you are at what you do. Sometimes you have to get some external reinforcement. So I went forward with the discussion, and with every step, it got more interesting, and which was a little unexpected, if I'm honest. And then the moment came when we were talking through some of the particulars of it, and I had learned well enough to know I demanded to report to the CEO. I think that was, their sort of position as well, but that was really important to me because I saw, being in technology, if you're not influencing the CEO, can be some challenges. As these things go, they wanted me to go through a lot of interviews and then potentially meet my boss, who would be my boss, the CEO. And I flipped the script a little on them and said, I'd really like to meet with the CEO and the CFO first. Because if I don't vibe with them, I'm out. I'm out. And that is so important. It's not just about the title and the money and, all the things. It is, if you don't vibe with your boss and the rest of the crew is important too, but that to me was the step one. So I took at this point, Amy Jo, I was still sort of 22 years. I'm happy here. It's going to have to be really interesting for me to take a leap. And I came in for the interview, and he loves when I tell the story. I came in for the interview and met with the CFO, who's a tremendous guy. And I really connected with his, sort of cerebral intelligence very quickly and had instant respect for what he does in real estate. And then I walked in to meet the CEO, and I walked in and he had a Pop-tart on his desk. And I was like, that's it. He's like, would you like some? And I was like, I think we're going to be okay. And we just connected. It was, instant connection, great conversation. I left that day knowing I'm going to make this work. This was meant to be. And there's no answer for why not now other than let's do it. Let's figure it out. Wow. And then it became, the journey to actually make that leap.
Oh my, yeah, which is a whole nother journey, but wow, that's so interesting. And isn't it interesting how, you had 22 years on this journey, you're happy, everything's aligned, and it makes sense, right? It just makes sense. And then something like a Pop-tart can spark this is it. And I know that sounds silly, but no, it's so humanizing too. It's like, oh, this is so.
Yeah. He's, and certainly I'd been around, being in the corporate culture my whole life. I'm a corporate soul. That's who I am. I'm married to an entrepreneur, but it terrifies me. The other side, it terrifies me what you do. This is my place. This is what I do. And that's an unusual experience. There's usually, it's buttoned up and it's, And it wasn't even about the title. Title was important from a, as you know, I don't have a college degree. I didn't finish college. So to be able to achieve that was meaningful to me. No doubt that was on the list of pros and cons. But that alone, I'm thankful because I went through those other why not nows and said no. I learned jumping for title, jumping for cash doesn't end well most of the time. I watched so many colleagues do that over the years, and they either ended up coming back to Hilton because it was a wonderful place, or they ended up really, struggling to find and then, hopefully eventually found another home. But it was such a blessing for me to go through all of that, to really be able to come here and, find a new place. It's hard. It's, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Leaving a nest of 22 years is, you're well known, you're respected, you're not questioned. You're not like, if I needed to switch something around, which I can certainly do here, but in your mind, you're playing games of like, okay, I'm new here. I need to be careful. I didn't have any of that. And so to leave that, it's fortunate. I still have the travel benefits. So that wasn't, a challenge because I'd been there long enough. The other interesting thing when I left that really was made the Why Not Now more powerful, I left in November of 2019. So anybody in corporate world knows you don't leave that close to the end of the year. You've got bonus tied up. You've got, and certainly Invitation Homes took good care of me, but 22 years, you're not going to take care of everything. So, I had to make a financial decision as well, but it felt so right. And the stars felt so aligned that, sat down with our wealth partner, and my husband and I, looked at each other, and we're both very, money doesn't drive the core of us. And, he was incredibly critical in the decision-making process and supportive of it. And my kids were as well. Most folks don't leave corporate in November. Mm-hmm. And of course, I got out right before COVID sort of hit hospitality.
I mean, yeah, you really can't even imagine what you had no idea, of course, what was to come, but talk about hitting hospitality for sure. So I think about, having known you for a while and had the opportunity to work with you at Hilton. And one of the things that it was so clear was your team it seems that they had a different experience. You had created your subculture, your own kind of carved out culture within the corporate, entity culture. And I love that you own the fact that you're a corporate gal, you're corporate to the core. And there's plenty of romanticism around entrepreneurship or doing your own thing, this and that. And you're very clear that this is your place as corporate. Can you talk a little bit about just how you've made it your home and you've been able to bend the rules a bit here and there where it becomes, a place that you have created?
Yeah. And I'm working on that here as well at Invitation Homes, but I'll talk a little bit about the experience previously. If you think about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, tattoos were, not really fashionable. So people had to wear long sleeve shirts or cover them to come into the office. Colored hair was not really fashionable or allowed. It wasn't professional. I shouldn't say fashionable. It wasn't professional. It was deemed unprofessional. I've always had long hair, and I had been asked, by women, unfortunately, more than once, saying you should cut your hair. Unbelievably, that this was not professional. And I share all of that because I was responsible for teams that were creative and engineers. And so they live in a world that they're creative holistically. In order for me to really unlock their full potential, I have to allow them to be creative. And it doesn't mean that every creative person has tattoos and blue hair, but I wanted to be able to attract talent regardless of who they were. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. What I care about is, are you bringing, your skill set and your talent? And do you feel comfortable to do that? And so in the same token, engineers can sometimes be aloof They can sometimes have great egos. And so there's these different personalities that I learned, and it took time and years of working through that I understood. If I don't create a slightly different environment, and I'm sure many product leaders and heads of technology or digital have experienced this if you worked within a brand company. If you didn't fight for their ability to be who they were, and by the way, that includes states that are legalizing marijuana, and you're still testing for marijuana to come in the door. Makes it, it's, again, doesn't mean every creative person is smoking weed, but there's that's a whole other podcast. It's just allowing for some of the freedoms they're already afforded to be in this country, allowing them to be afforded in the corporation. And so that's what I set out to do. And look, Hilton let me. I mean, they embraced it over time. I did it in a way that was, how far can I bend this rule without breaking it, without being disrespectful, without going through proper channels? Let me push to the edge, show how productive it is, show the results, and doors open when that happens. And then, we were able to create, as you said, an environment where people felt comfortable to come to work. One of the most important things to me was, I look at my team as a collection of souls. These are people. They lose loved ones. They go through divorce. They have, challenges at home. They have mental health issues. And all of that doesn't stop when they walk in the door to do their work. And so I also wanted to create an environment that they understood that I cared, that I gave a shit, that they were important to me. And one of the reasons that it felt right, the right time for me to leave, was my team got so large, I couldn't put my arms around those souls anymore. It was too big. And there's great leaders who can handle really large teams more effectively. I do much better with a smaller team because I like to go one level deep. I like to be there, and make sure that I'm able to understand what challenges people have and how to create an environment where they feel comfortable to use the tools at their disposal to step away for a moment. Or before remote working was really popular, we had more than one person who had a family member that had either a tragic accident or was ill, and they needed, they had to make a decision. Do I quit my job to come be with you? Or, do I stay here and just try to do this remote? And I would look at them and say, well, let's create an environment where you don't have to quit your job and you can go. And how many hours can you give me a day or a week? Let's negotiate. And, those people then became, oh my gosh, so loyal. Mm-hmm. They never left. And that is, in my opinion, I can't say it enough. Yes, I did the work to create the environment, but I was in a company that allowed me to do it ultimately. And so, kudos and props to Hilton for that. And then here at Invitation Homes, we are building that and rebuilding. It's different. We're a different company, different culture, actually a lot. It's a smaller company, so it's a more fluid and family environment culture, which is fantastic for me. Love it. And we're building this environment of creating. We don't have to create so much a culture within a culture here because the overarching culture fits better with, and time has passed. So all of these things are now commonplace. There's purple hair no one takes two looks at anymore. But it's great to be able to re-energize those juices and build from, the ground up again.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. You're an incredible leader. You really, really are. Is that innate to you? If you look back at your career, would you say, and just spotting other leaders, you had 1,200 people that you were that were on your team when you left Hilton. How much of leadership is just a born talent, and how much have you learned over the years?
What a question. I'm the youngest of 9. My parents stayed married until my father passed away, but I had stepbrothers and sisters. So I lived amongst divorce and was an only child within a group of 9. So I was born into, sort of different environment, Brady Bunch for sure, but, kind of a little different. And I was sick as a kid. I was quite sick. I was in and out of the hospital a lot. And I think a lot of my both optimism and leadership comes from those experiences. So I'm not sure I was born with it, but I think what you maybe experience in your childhood influences how you lead and what's important to you. And, it was really, that's where the soul connecting with souls come from. That's where understanding that there's, what you see on social is often not the whole story. Most of the time, it's not the whole story. And also understanding, that happens in corporate America. You don't see the whole story. And how could I break through that? Because I knew that I had a different story. I knew what I was bringing to work. And so, I think that a lot of my leadership comes from that. And I think my ability to see other leaders. I love moving puzzle pieces and helping people achieve their goals. And more than once in my career, I've done wife swap, with folks and said, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're both miserable. And you both if I swap you, let's see what happens. And, doors unlock, helping people leave sometimes, and I have letters and notes of people who they were miserable, and helping them leave opened up so much opportunity for them. That's important to me. And I think it stems from those experiences as I was growing up, and how I applied, that to my life and then wanted to bring it forward. Certainly fine-tuned over the years through, making mistakes and, sometimes bad hires, and there's always those stories. If you don't have them, you can't fine tune your skill or your gift. You gotta screw up once in a while to get things right. So definitely have those moments.
I love it. It's funny. As I listen to you and just, thinking about your journey, you're like a corporate alchemist. You're like an artist, and of all, you're a CIO, and to have that, you wouldn't necessarily always, think of that typical hat being so creative, but you really have kind of been able to create within the corporate environment. And it's not always common, when people feel that maybe they don't have the freedom to, but you've created freedom within corporate America. It's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I think one of the beauties of taking your why not now moment is I don't know that I would have really believed you if I hadn't made the leap to come here, because I could see as I was building what was sort of now natural to me and going, okay, great. What do I have here? What do I need to build? Oh, okay. I need to rebuild this. It wasn't bad, but it didn't have some of those components. And it really hit me. This is your gift. This is what you do differently from others. This is, your superpower, what you can bring. And there's no reason to minimize it or dismiss it. Lean into it, go for it. And I'm still working on that. It's a new place. But it did help me understand, by looking back, it helped me understand what I had achieved. And, similar to my comment about me encouraging leaders to go on interviews, just sitting in an interview, and when they say, tell me about yourself, of course, you're going to talk about all your successes and what you've done. And more than one leader has said to me, gosh, that just boosted my confidence. I'm not going, but boy, I just feel better because I said all those things out loud and they're true. I did all those things. And that, I think, being able to step away from Hilton after 22 years and look back, it was emotional, but it was fulfilling. And I was proud of what I was able to do there. And I'm proud of what I'm building here.
What's one thing you find yourself learning over and over, Virginia?
I think, when I look at organizational efficiency within a corporate model, I get into the sort of process of it. I tend to be very highly creative brain, but I've got the structural component. And boy, if I don't have to relearn all the time, get your balance right. Get your balance right. Like you've gone too far structural, bring it back, get some of your creative in there. That's where your juice is. And you would think at this point I would go in with balance. But it is something that I have to look in the mirror and, recognize when I've gone into my structural brain, which I love that I have that, but I have to keep it in check sometimes because it feels corporate. It feels like the right thing to do. And so I got to, remind myself, which again, you would think I wouldn't have to at this point, but I do.
No, and it's probably self-awareness too, like constantly, it's probably a daily practice, right? How do you invest in yourself?
Well, a couple of different ways. I do some level of journaling. So I've always enjoyed kind of getting my thoughts out one way or another. Sometimes just thinking, used to have a long commute. So I think on that commute, sometimes talk on that commute. Thank God for speakerphones and headphones because people don't think you're crazy anymore talking in the car. I do a level of, podcast or video hopping where I have a need or I need inspiration. And then again, I'll say it without prompting, like the Renegade Accelerator was a big moment for me. I knew it was there. I didn't do it until now. Wasn't sure, sort of like I knew I wanted to break through something. I knew I needed to recenter myself. But that I think taught me again how important it is to invest in myself, not just as a professional, not just as a corporate, warrior, but as a woman. Like, what do I need as a woman and those things? And that was a big shift for me. I was never comfortable with women corporate, the sort of, you're a female leader. No, I'm just a leader. Like I fought against it. I think having 5 brothers just taught me early on, like you're good enough. It doesn't matter what your sex is. And that, coming through the Renegade program reminded me that it's okay to be a woman. It's okay. It's okay to have different needs. It's okay to surround yourself with other strong women. And take that investment in yourself from a growth perspective. And so really powerful and really important for me, very, very stubborn point for me in my life.
I just kind of want to like double click into that. When and I know what you mean, I think like the reference to women's groups within corporate, it sounds like same here, but you were a little bit allergic to them. So how was your experience different with the Renegade program?
I think a couple of things come to mind. One, I think, the selection process and the diversity of women, meaning corporate women, entrepreneurs, those who are deciding between those two, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of thinking. There's just a nice group of different perspectives and diversity of age. So I'll be 49 at the end of this month, at the end of September, I should say. And, it was great to be around young, energetic women. It was great to be around older, energetic women and, in the middle. That was inspiring. When I look at the corporate experiences I've had before, they're very academic. They're put together as a class rather than an experience. Didn't leave room to breathe really as an experience. The only experience you were allowed to have was at the bar after, the class. And A, I don't drink, and B, social situations, I do them because I have to, but I don't love them. It's not where I'm going to bond with you. The other thing that was always really, and I think the hardest for me, is I have never seen, and I've been fortunate and blessed. And I know that I've had tremendous male leaders that I have, been a part of. Even the person who really right-sized me because I grew up in Hilton was a man, went to bat for me for my promotion within technology. A lot of times in a corporate women's group, which are externally provided to companies, there tends to be some male bashing. There tends to be, this is how you deal with men, or this is how you break through. Now, I'm not saying there's not women who have been absolutely held back by situations involving sexism, 100%. I just didn't need to go to a class for that. I didn't need to be that. I wanted to learn how to be a more successful leader. And so I would often ask our training groups, and anytime I was tapped to attend, it was like, can you find me a co-ed group? But you're a female executive. Oftentimes you're asked to attend those things. And so the program that you've put together, from my eyes, which is why, it works, I think, as well for a corporate woman as an entrepreneur, is depending on what they're trying to achieve, is, it allows that breathing room. It allowed me to be a woman and to be a woman executive, without having to openly discuss the fact that I was a woman. And, it wasn't a point ever of conversation. You just built a collection and then said, how do we lift ourselves up and each other up? That really helped me shed some history that I needed to shed.
Thank you for sharing, because I think that's really insightful. And we're so grateful to have you in this collective, just this community. So grateful. And if you look at just mentorship, you'd mentioned as you navigated your career, similarly, I've had a lot of men that have guided me and really helped, get me to that next place. Who are your, and you don't have to share names, but like, what are the types of people and qualities that, from the mentors that you've had, that you appreciate most?
Yeah, great question. I really think there was a couple. When I go way back, when I worked for American Airlines, there was a male boss who sat me, I will never forget this, sat me down. I was young and spitfire and full of myself. Oh my God. And, he said, you're really bright, but if you want to make it, you got to tone it down. Like, tone it down. Like, you're bringing an energy level that is destructive rather than productive. And boy, I was mad at him and, really angry with him. And then I, took a few days and thought about it and went, okay. And it still stays in my mind to this day, because essentially what he was telling me was, there's a level of professionalism that's required. Don't lose yourself, but be respectful of the environment that you're in. And so he was really important. And so I looked for people like that would say to me what I needed to hear, that weren't just giving me pats on the back and saying, you're doing a great job, and only kind of addressing the positives that I was doing and leaning it. They would tell me what I needed to hear. And there was, a mix of male and female throughout the years, in different ways. I'm also a big believer in, I had some really negative experiences from a leadership perspective, but I still learned. So they still taught me something. And even if that is, I don't want to be like that, that's still a lesson and still really important. And then lastly, I had a lot of peer mentors. One in particular was our chief architect, and he taught me so much about technology and mentored me through how to really put together some pieces that, because I'm not an engineer, I needed to understand. And, he was my boss for a period of time, but most of our, experience was as a peer. And we had a great relationship that absolutely, no doubt, helped me grow in my career. But I think if I had to put a fine point on it, it is whoever could stand in front of me and tell me the truth. I gravitated to those. And I'm so thankful for those people.
That's so good. Yeah. The telling you what you needed to hear. It's interesting how years later you still have that voice of, you're really bright. You need to tone it down. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's so interesting how certain things stick with you and how valuable that lesson has become over and over and over.
Agreed. And I will say one thing I'll say on that is that I did find sometimes men were more comfortable to say those things to me than women. And I encourage women, like, we need to hear that as we're growing. And as you're a female mentor, have those hard conversations. They're important. And guess what? If the person on the other end can't handle a hard conversation, then they can't handle being in senior leadership. Like, it does come give and take. And even adding again to my, why not now and big decision, I was working for a woman when I left, and I adored her. I thought she was brilliant and one of the fastest, sort of able to pick up in a pace and a speed that I, couldn't even imagine. And she was tremendous. So there's, I think as a guide for women, we need to not be afraid or shy away from those tough decisions.
It's a great point. So it's a great point. So if we were to go back, to that, I don't know how old you were at the time when you had the conversation at American Airlines. If you were to go back to that version of yourself and share something, say something to Virginia, what would you say?
I would say, don't mind the pace. You'll get there. I wanted to be there tomorrow. And I saw others going faster than me. And I thought that was supposed to be me. And I would tell her, it's like, don't mind the pace, ride the pace. It's okay, don't be lazy, but don't mind it. And ultimately, the path that I've taken is the path, I was meant to take. And so those opportunities when I was director and vice president to leave and double your income and double your title. And, I'm so thankful I was not sucked away by those, because I would have had a little burst. But I watched, the internet bubble. You remember it. I mean, it was like you could leave and make whatever, but so many ended up lost at sea trying to find. And I stayed the course and have tremendous experience as a result of it. And that will carry me for the rest of my career, but also the rest of my life. And I know that without a doubt. I'm so thankful that, my ship stayed on the waters.
I love the don't mind the pace. You'll get there. Gosh. And I just feel like this need to mention that, we talk a lot about social media, and oh my gosh, I found the original direct message, from maybe, a good 10 plus years ago, and how technology had enabled our friendship, just a rapport that then blossomed into so many different other, paths in life, and how it all started with the human connection. So we were telling this recently in the Renegade Accelerator, and it's so true how, we've done different things in business, but more than anything, I just appreciate how, we've been able to have a spark of a friendship from technology.
And I don't think I've ever told you this. We have these memories that are kind of seared in our minds, different. And then there's other things that we can't remember. I know that happened. I remember where I was sitting at my desk. I remember the direction I was looking when I got your DM. I can visualize that moment because, you were kind of a big deal. You were with Shaq, you were like, and when you responded to me, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And you were a real person working through your own business, growing, and then got to meet you finally in person. I think it was in Austin that I finally got to meet you. And it, your energy and your aura is what I think kept the friendship going, because it was like, okay, this is not, social media shtick. She's a real person with a lot of vision and value, and someone that I want to be aligned to. But I find it interesting that it is a moment that is seared in my memory I'm sure my husband finds it interesting too, because the things that I forget these days, I probably shouldn't. But that one, I remember. It was good.
I equally remember when we were corresponding, I was at the Wit in Chicago on the rooftop, and ironically at a DoubleTree by Hilton property. But I remember sitting outside, like, isn't that funny how just certain moments, and well, thank you for your friendship, and I look to you as well as a mentor, and just it's so incredibly grateful for you, and a renegade. For sure. And thanks for sharing your time and wisdom with us today. And you said this is your first podcast, which you would never know. I feel really honored to get to do, have your first.
Thank you. Yeah. I am humbled and just amazed to be here. So thank you for the opportunity to do so.
Oh, thank you. Everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?